every season it gets donated, and then you see it being shipped overseas, and I'm thinking, it's just woeful waste. And seeing that was like a big wake-up call for me, and I'm like, nope. Our philosophy is that we'd rather, spend more on a quality item than partake in the fast fashion.
Welcome to Milton and King's On the Wall podcast, where we engage in conversations with artists, designers, and more. In this episode, we speak with Allison Maestas, the creative director behind the brand Semilla Casa. If you enjoy these conversations, please take a moment to subscribe and leave us a rating and review. Hi, Allison.
Hello, Chris. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad.
What are you up to this morning?
Racing around, trying to get a few things done before I sat down to chat with you.
Well, thank you for chatting with me today. You're calling in from, is it Arizona?
Yes, Scottsdale, Arizona.
Scottsdale, Arizona. How do you like it there?
You know what? In the last couple of days, it's been fabulous because we've had rain. I know that California's not so thrilled with it, but we're happy to get it here for sure.
I'm actually thrilled with it. I like the rain. I mean, I know it affects different people differently. If you're in the Hollywood Hills or you're in Malibu, and mudslides are a real thing. But but no, I love it. Makes everything green. It makes the mountain ranges, capped with snow, and
lush.
It's awesome. So so when you get rain in Scottsdale, that's like flash floods, isn't it? Or is there a danger of flash floods?
There is, mainly like in the valley in Phoenix.
Okay.
But here it's because we don't get that much rain that when it does rain, there is a lot of runoff for sure. Like our front courtyard started to fill up. But like right now it's not raining, so it's got time to dry out a little. But yes, I love it. I love the rain. I think 3 days is my max. 3 days of rain. and then I'm like, okay.
I remember because I really liked Scottsdale. I've been there a few times, and it very much is that desert community, but it's very I don't know. It's a very nice. I don't know if upscale is the right word, but it's just very. I don't know. It feels fancy when you're there. Scottsdale it feels like.
I think of it as like a desert oasis.
Yeah.
It's. When we first moved here, my friends were saying I'd sent them pictures of the house, and in the background's the really tall palm trees, and they're like, "But you're in the desert. What's with the palm trees?"
Yeah,
so it's like I would think of it as an oasis.
Phoenix and is the same way. There's lots of, like, when my wife and I were there was lots of palm trees all over the place. It's not what you think when you think of Arizona, but
not at all. But Arizona in itself is there's lots of microclimates here. Like you've got a little bit of Colorado, you've got the desert, you've got the you name it.
You
There's
go
a
up
little
the
bit
range
of
towards
everything.
Flagstaff, and you're cold.
Yeah. Which is
trees and very green.
And you don't think of it as being that way, but
no.
Yeah. So it was surprising for me when we first moved here. I wasn't really looking forward to it. But it's
when did you first move there? How long have you been in Scottsdale?
I want to say 2018 we moved here.
Oh, so you haven't been there that long? 5 years?
Yeah, it's going on,
years.
And it's stacking up. It's almost time to go. But when I first moved here, I was thinking to myself, it's the best kept secret. It was way better than what I expected. But this past summer has been brutally hot, and which is why I'm glad for the rain. But
there's a lot of rock gardens and rock lawns. I would say in Arizona.
There are, and thankfully our house does not have a rock garden. But having said that, we're looking at xeriscaping this coming year.
Xeriscaping. I'm not familiar with what that is.
Xeriscaping is removing the grass and.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So we're trying to be. I feel like it's a waste of water when we're the only people in the street with lush grass And
Yeah, trying to keep it green in 115 degrees summer is
yeah,
rough.
yeah. And so that's something that we're planning to do, just for low maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
making life a
Yeah.
little easier. Yeah.
Now you said, I forgot the actual term you said, but you're thinking of moving out of Scottsdale.
We are thinking
Did you say it was getting stale, or what did you say?
oh, well, my husband and I have a serious case of wanderlust, and we have a tendency to only stay in one place for more than maybe, I think the most we stayed in one place was 8 years in Denver.
Okay.
So we're coming close, and we're looking for our next next location for us to be.
So how long were you in Denver for?
8 years. That was the
Oh, that was the
most.
longest one. Okay, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
8 years there, going on 6 years here.
yeah. 7 years in California.
Oh, where were you in California?
We were in North County, San Diego. We were in Oceanside.
Oh, okay. I love it there.
Yeah, I loved it there as well.
How long did you say you were there for?
7 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, love it. Love
So
it.
what prompted the move from Oceanside to Denver? And then Denver
Um,
to Scottsdale. I'm kind of
I
curious
know.
to know
I know.
what is either pushing you away from those areas or drawing you to a different area.
Usually it's my husband's job,
Okay.
um, but the in between California and Denver, we moved back to Australia for 5 years. Um, my mother wasn't well at the time, so we packed up and went back there.
Okay.
And we made our way back to Denver, and then we came to Arizona with a job transfer with my husband.
Mm.
Yeah.
So his work has allowed you to kind of move around, and I guess it sort of suited you since you got this wanderlust bug.
It has, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for him that I'm allowed to do what I do. Um, I think without him and his assistance along the way, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a good thing. And he has a very similar mindset when it comes to what I do,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, he's a great support to me. And yeah, he's it's just, I think when we first moved to California, his position there enabled me to start my own company. Then he opened the doors for a lot of clients for me. Um, so that was great, because I'd left behind a great job in Melbourne to come out to us to the US. That was back in goodness 97. So yeah, lots of back and forth traveling around, but yeah.
Now the subtle accent doesn't totally give it away, I guess, but you are from Australia. Um, it does seem like you've lost some of your accent a little bit. Um, so were you born and raised in Melbourne?
No, actually, I we were living in Melbourne prior to us moving out to the US, but I
Mm-hmm.
was born in Queensland
Okay.
and grew up in country Queensland,
Mm-hmm.
which at the time when you're living there, you might just think, oh, it's so ho hum. But I look back now and think, man, it was amazing, amazing start to life.
Yeah. Well, that's where
Something,
Milton and King is. There, I guess that's considered regional
yeah, they're not
country
far from
Queensland.
where I was. Yeah, like 2 hour drive, which people might think that sounds like a long way, but it's for Australia, it is not,
Right. Lots of stuff is very spread out.
for sure. And it's not uncommon to drive an hour for dinner,
Yeah. You
which
do that in LA, but really it's an
it's
hour on the
traffic.
freeway, and it's really about a 15-minute walk.
That's it.
um, well, that's cool. So you grew up in Australia. How did you? Is your husband Australian or is he American?
He has his Australian citizenship, but he
Mm-hmm.
was he was actually born in Japan. He
Oh, okay.
was a Navy brat, and
Okay, military.
yeah, and he grew up in San Diego and moved to Australia to take a position out there with a printing company.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to get a little bit jump into your sort of your art background.
Hmm.
Was it something that you were always doing as a kid? Was it something that you developed at some point? Were you just were your parents artistic? Where did all this come from?
I, you know, you think back and you think I'm the only one that's like this, but I was always drawing and sketching from a very young age. And when I wasn't drawing or sketching, I was redecorating the house, doing different things. But I think looking at my family, I think I take after my father, who was very creative. Um,
What did he do?
he wasn't so much. He was more an engineer. He would um, design everything. I mean, he pretty much rebuilt the house that we grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he would just sit at the kitchen table with his graph paper back then and design something and then go and build it, whether it's, furniture, um, machinery, trailers, you name it. He was very creative in that way. So I think I take after him. And then just recently, we were visiting my uncle, who now is in elderly care. He's in a nursing home, and he has taken up painting. And I'm
Hmm.
thinking, oh, he's the resident painter. And I'm like, maybe I got it from him. it's it's I've never seen him, with a paintbrush in hand before.
Yeah.
I never looked at him that way. So yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, I'm not sure. It's my guess would be from my dad's side.
Well, like a lot of times, people think of building and things like that almost like from an engineering perspective. A lot of times, like if you're in university, you think of the engineers as not being the creative types; they're more of like the math heads. And but there's definitely a creative aspect to building and creating, you know,
To-
machinery and
yeah,
physical objects.
totally.
So,
Yeah, it's funny because recently I was talking with my brothers about it, and my dad we'd used to go camping a lot growing up, and he would be very particular about how to pack the back of the car.
mhm.
And that's something that I was laughing with my brothers about, because we're all the same way. We're like,
Like Tetris, like
totally, totally. It's like I want to say to my husband, please step aside and let me do it.
yeah.
And my brothers say the same thing. So it's, we've all come away with that aspect from dad.
Mm.
Um, but
It's
yeah,
like it's like a spatial intelligence where you can see where things are going to move and you can flip things this way and it just fits just right. And
totally. Yeah, it's hilarious when you think back at it, but it's made us very hard to live with when it comes to packing cars. It's like,
very particular.
yes, terrible.
How many siblings did you have?
I have two brothers, one older and one younger,
Okay.
and they're both the math heads.
Oh,
I'm,
they're both the math heads.
yeah,
Let's just to be very clear, math heads, not
not meth, no.
yes, not math heads. They're
No,
math
we're
heads.
talking math, physics.
Sometimes, just
Yes,
want to make sure I'm very clear with
physics.
that. um, so
Yes.
they're okay. So they don't have the creative gene. They're not drawing or painting or
No, but
designing.
they have the creative gene, like we just mentioned, in a different way. They are
Okay.
very creative in the technical field. Yeah,
Okay. That
which
makes sense.
is yeah, amazing. It's like you just said, it's like creativity shows up in different ways, and I think we're all a little creative in our own ways.
So at what point did you come to the realization that maybe you were drawing sketches as a kid and all that kind of stuff? At what point did you think this is sort of my thing? This is like I want to do something with this.
I think I was just naturally drawn to it. I do remember, unfortunately, being in school, and my mathematics teacher saying to me, "Oh goodness, you're nothing like your brother," and like total, insult. Um, and I'm thinking, no, I'm not. It's I'm not like him. So it was just, I was never interested in that side of things. I was always interested in the art side. It was just ingrained in me.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's, I think from what's that, high school, we'd be freshmen when you get to choose your classes. I went down the route of all the art classes at that
Okay.
point. Yeah.
And so when you are want to get into a career, I want to do something, professionally, is art at the forefront of your mind? Are you thinking this is something that I want to go down? Or are you?
No. And to be honest with you, it wasn't. I think you leave school. Well, I don't know. I think a lot of people think, and I did this to my own daughter. When you finish high school, people just assume you know what you want to do. Um, and the reality was, I had no idea. I was interested in art and in journalism, but there was nothing that was screaming out to me, "This is where I needed to go." So I think, we just,
Journalism, like writing for a newspaper, or
yeah,
or like
yeah,
TV
yeah.
news or something, or?
It was for a newspaper. I did work experience as a senior with a newspaper, and I was very interested in that. That's was probably the direction I was wanting to go, but I wasn't completely convinced of that. But during that time, actually, with the newspaper, a job did come up as a graphic reproducer, which my mother at the time, she's going, "You need to apply for this," and I'm like, "Okay, I'll apply for it." But I thought for sure they wouldn't take me on because I had been there as a journalist with that mentality to take that route. But they
So what do you think appealed to you about journalism?
telling a story, telling people's story.
Hmm.
And I think I look at journalism now, and it's changed a lot. I think all the industries have changed quite a bit from back then. But
For the better or for the worse?
I think mainstream for the worst. I think better in that we have podcasts, we have YouTube, we can we're able to get a broader view of the world and what's going on. Whereas, like growing up in country Queensland, Bryce will, or Richard will tell you, we probably had 3 or 4 channels on the television.
Hmm.
We're limited to what we received as far as news. But the communities there, they revolve around like the newspaper, the news.
So it was journalism, and the newspaper was sort of a bigger part of life
Yeah.
where you grew up, in that,
Oh
in
yeah.
that in your environment where you were.
Yeah. And I loved media, of whether it be print media, television, you name it. I was interested in all, and photography. Like when you take on graphic reproduction, it's an industry that fell by the wayside when everything went digital. But pretty much it was like a study of color and light and reproducing colors. So it's that ability, to, and it's such a, you can't reproduce what we're seeing with the natural eye onto a piece of paper, but in graphic reproduction you're doing the best you can to make that reproduction.
So what was that practically like? What, as a someone who's doing graphic reproduction, what are you actually doing?
Back then you would be splicing film together. You would, it was like now when there's someone printing, like the wallpaper for instance, you're printing in CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So when you're looking at a picture, you have to break it down into those 4 colors to reproduce it. And when you're doing that, sometimes some colors don't reproduce as well as others. So when you're looking at a computer screen, it's usually in RGB. So you're taking 2 different forms of how colors represented, and then you've got to change it and then put it in a print. Exactly what's happening with the wallpaper. So it's making sure that if you paint a picture, that when that picture goes onto the wallpaper, or whether it's in a book or whatever, it it is representing the original artwork as best as possible. And you're breaking it down. And I remember probably the first week that I went to study it, they broke it down into white light, and it had never really occurred to me until that day that white light was made up of all the colors. And I'm thinking, you know, I wasn't particularly scientific. So that to me was amazing, that you're seeing colors when one color's removed. White light is all the colors together. So it helped me in understanding how you're reproducing, and the study behind photography. Yeah,
That's really interesting. Yeah, because like they say, black is technically no color and white is every color.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
And you'd think it'd be the
Um,
opposite.
yeah, yeah, because you'd think like something would like the more color you add to it, maybe it would get
Yeah.
darker and darker
You're
and darker
thinking
or
paint.
something.
Yeah, paint
Yeah,
and not light. Yeah.
interesting. So, what do you think it was? Because you said your mom said you had to go for this job,
Oh,
and you were
she
into journalism,
she
and
knew. I
so
think mums know.
did she see the creative aspect of you and be like,
Oh
"You're in
yeah.
the wrong industry. You need to be going over here"? Or
Yeah, I think she could see me in either, but she knew that mums know. Mums just know, and she knew.
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
You were mentioning in journalism the thing that appealed to you is the storytelling,
Mm.
and storytelling is such a primal thing in humanity. I can see in your designs, in your wallpaper designs, there is a storytelling aspect, and I now that you're mentioning about the your interest in journalism and particularly telling stories, I can see how this may be a through line from
Yeah.
your interest in journalism to your art that you go in to create. Um, but you say your mom knew, your mothers know, and your mom knew you needed to go down this other path.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
so where did you go from doing that graphic work,
I
and at
I
what point did you start creating your own work outside of your profession?
I was when I was working as a graphic reproducer, the guy that I worked with closely, he was a very good photographer, and I ended up buying a lot of his photographic equipment as he updated. I took his hand me downs, which were great. I started delving really deep into photography, and for a long time, which is weird actually to think that I kind of veered away from that now, but during that time, that was my creative outlet, was the photography. And when we moved to California, I entered the San Diego State Fair, not the State Fair, the San Diego County
County
Fair,
fair. Mm-hmm.
their photography competition. And um, I think I had 4 or 5 pieces picked for display, which
Oh, how cool.
which was my first time ever entering it, and it was a guy in San Marcos, I believe, that said, you should enter these, and I'm like, really? And I was I think my son had just been born, and I was watching the television, a news broadcast, and they were standing in front of my photo. One of the photos that I'd submitted was on TV, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they've chosen one. So that was exciting for me. But
So prior to that, you had never done anything professionally with photography. You just loved photography, and I
yeah,
assume you were taking lots of photos, and then
yeah,
you just sort of, on somebody's advice, entered your stuff in, and
yeah,
you're already getting recognized.
yeah. And I have hundreds of like back then, everything was film, and in graphic reproduction, you learn how to print photos. So I was very much into the black and white Kodak film and paper. So yeah, I did that for years, and I think only when children came along, I kind of veered away from that, because things changed to digital for one, and life gets busy with with kids. But yeah, I went into more graphics, and as far as changing from actually working for myself, it was really when we moved to the US that that kind of opened up for me to think, okay, I'm going to start this for myself. And I started with a few clients in San Diego, and it just moved on from there.
But what were you doing exactly? Because I can see that you know, like I'm just following kind of the storyline here. You have, you know, you're sketching and drawing as a kid. You go into journalism, then you go into graphic reproduction.
Hmm.
What point do you start designing your own designs?
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look back at it. I'm like, how did that go? I started working with a fellow Australian, and we were working with fabrics coming in from Europe. And a lot of the companies that we were working with, and this is the interior design part that really interested me as well. Um, a lot of these companies that we were bringing in promoting the goods, when they realized that there was a market here, they would come in and, promote themselves, and they really didn't need us. And I'm thinking the only way to really be a step ahead is to be designing your own collections. And so that's how that started. And that was, I want to say, back in 2011, 12, 2011, 12, that I started designing patterns
For fabric.
for fabric. And it it takes a while to find your feet as to what style is your style, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
still playing with that to this day.
Mm.
And that's when it comes back to the storytelling. It's like, um, there's certain times in your life, and you think, yes, this can represent that. Like, for instance, we just came back from a trip to Italy, and the next collection I'm working on is Italian flavored. So it's
Mm.
like, I want to represent that trip. I saw so many amazing things. So it's like,
You can definitely go there and get inspired. That's for sure.
yeah, everywhere you look. So it's like when you have an experience, it is the storytelling you want to represent it. But um, yeah, it depends on the mood. It depends on my mood as to what comes out. But I think, with everything changing, because I still have my original watercolor set, which looks disgusting. It's well used, um, but I still have it. There's colors in there that I'll still pull on, but I have not touched that, to be totally honest with you, in 3 years, because
Hmm.
everything has moved over to digital for me.
Yeah.
I still have artwork, folders and folders of original artwork that I will flip through and get inspired to revisit, like as a jumping off point for something. I'm thinking, yeah, I haven't quite seen that piece through yet. I'll revisit it. Um, but I'll revisit it now in a more digital format.
Gotcha.
So, and it just makes my life easier that I can be, like, when we were away in Italy, I was still doing drawing on my iPad because technology has allowed me to do that.
Did you find the transition difficult, or is it something that you picked up pretty easily?
I did not like it in the beginning at all. Um, there is something very different about using a paintbrush and a stylus
Mm-hmm.
on a screen. Um, and mind you, with the technology, there's so many brush types and whatnot that you can play around with, but it is never the same as picking up a
Mm-hmm.
paintbrush. Um, so yeah, I had a difficult time at first trying to find what was me, and I'm still learning that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you'll see that with the next collection that's come out. I've kind of taken it a step further. But yeah, it opens up a world that I didn't have access to before.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you can layer. It's the layering, I think, that digital technology gives you that traditional art does not.
Hmm.
So it's interesting in that way because when I was away, I was taking lots of photographs um, that I could refer back to
Yeah.
for bits and pieces. So yeah, it really does open up possibilities,
Yeah.
and it's just finding your feet in it. And I don't think you ever really do. I think you're constantly evolving in that respect.
Yeah. Well, I guess you have to adapt, right?
You know, someone said that to me years and years ago when we changed from traditional graphic reproduction to digital. And they said, you have to adapt and go with it. Same with any company.
Yeah.
You have to adapt to technology or you're left behind.
Yeah.
So you choose, yeah, this is what I want to stay in. And then you adapt and stay current. It's
Now
work.
I noticed on your website, so you have the Beverly Bungalow,
Hmm.
and it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's primarily focused on fabrics, right?
Correct.
Um,
Correct.
Now there's sort of an ethos for the Beverly Bungalow that's very all about sustainability and printing to order, like, creating to order, not having excess stock, things like that.
Hmm.
Could you speak a little bit to that?
The Beverly Bungalow began when we moved to Arizona. Um, and it was pretty much based on this little desert oasis that we lived in. We live in, I should say. Um, when it comes to sustainability, I don't like seeing waste of
Hmm.
any description. Um, and even like when it comes to recycling, Americans don't realize, our recycling bins are very big. And it
Yeah.
sounds so silly. You've got a very big recycling bin. In Australia, it's like a quarter of that size. You don't have that much recycling and you might take it out every second week. Whereas here, our recycling bin is full every week and it's just excess packaging, excess waste.
Hmm.
So it's something that I is like a line in the sand that I do not want to cross. I just want to make sure that we have as little impact as possible, and we're trying to obtain zero waste. That's our aim. It's a work in progress, but that's where what we're aiming for. So printing digitally is the way that we are set up. So we're
Was there like a realization moment? Was there anything that struck you that said, this is the way that I want to go, or I don't want to make sure I don't do it this other way? Was there, what brought you to that frame of mind?
two things really. It was the industry prior to digital technology coming into fabrics and wallpapers. I mean, digital wallpapers are relatively fairly new in the big scheme of things. So, so previously, when you'd purchase fabrics from overseas, you might be purchasing a roll of between 50 and 100 meters, and you're holding stock, and you hope it sells. It may not. So, holding stock, there's a lot of gambling in holding stock. So, what would happen if we had leftover stock? We would donate it to charities. Usually, the main one that we would donate to was the fabric was being sent to Haiti for women there to remake the fabric into articles that they could resell,
Hmm.
um, which is great. I mean, I'm happy, very happy to partake in that. However, it's like that's one degree that you can donate. There's a lot of other waste, so it hurts me to see waste. And I think when my daughter was going through high school, because the US is not particularly strong with school uniforms, whereas Australia you are. So it was never thought of what you would wear to school. Every beginning of every school year, it was like you get sized up for your school uniform. Whereas here, it was because there was not a school uniform, it was a constant fashion parade. It was
Mm-hmm.
constantly buying clothes, and it was, the whole fast fashion industry that's here, that, there's a place for everything. But then when you see what happens when, you know, every season it gets donated and then you see it being shipped overseas, and I'm thinking, it's just woeful waste.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing that was like a big wake up call for me. And I'm like, nope. So our philosophy is that we'd rather, spend more on a quality item than partake in the fast fashion. And yeah, that's same with it's across the board, whether it's food. We buy organic. We're very particular about what we eat and what we consume overall. So we're very aware of our impact,
Yeah.
and we want to partner with other companies that are also aware of their impact. So
Right.
yeah, Milton and King's a great partner in that respect.
So now your brand that you're using to create the wallpaper designs
Mm-hmm.
is La Semilla Casa, right? So
Correct.
that's a brand within the Beverly Bungalow. Is that how you
Correct.
would
Yes.
now? So what is La Semilla Casa? Where does that name come from, and what does it mean to you?
It has a lot to do with a couple of the patterns that are in this collection, the Haven collection that we're releasing with Milton and King. La Semilla Casa um, is we're keeping La Semilla as a name for a couple of things. One is the label for ready made, so which includes the wallpaper. But so La Semilla is the seed. It's like the inspiration, the seed,
Mm-hmm.
and the casa is, of course, the house. It was going to be La Semilla de la Casa, which is the seed of the house. But
Mm.
it's the seed of inspiration. It's the seed of growth. It is where creation comes from, creativity. It's that first little inkling that gets you started.
Mm-hmm. Now the so under the La Semilla Casa, this wallpaper collection, you're calling it the Haven collection.
Correct. Yeah.
Now it looks like you have, I think it's 13 designs. Um, and the designs really do range from
Mm.
floral to tropical to very geometric and subtle and that sort of thing. Um, was there a theme that sort of runs through the whole collection that makes it the Haven collection?
Well, for one, there is quite a range that is seen in the Haven collection, and that is we've picked from, I think, four of our collections. So usually under La Semilla we have floral collection, Jubilee, um, the tropical, Sonoran, different collections that we've just taken a bit from each of those collections to make up the Haven collection. But I think the one print in the Haven collection that started it all was the Barney print, the floral, the more traditional floral.
Yeah, I noticed you have Barney Vintage,
Mm-hmm.
Barney Fields, and Barney Joy, and
Yeah,
they're all
very similar.
florals.
Yeah.
So what is where does where does the design for the Barney designs, where does that come from? Why is it called Barney's, and what are the differences between the three?
Um, Barney Fields and Barney Vintage. No, sorry, Barney's Joy and Barney's Vintage. Very similar. One is just stronger, more definite colors. The Vintage obviously is a more worded down, subtle colorway, and
Mm-hmm.
Fields is a smaller print, more of a wildflower look. Um, that was my first print that has been tucked away, and this is the first time it's been released. But I started working on that print in, I'd say, January 2021. 21.
Okay.
Yeah. I had been diagnosed with cancer at the end of 2020, and
Hmm.
um, it was it was a couple of years going through the treatment and um, uh, reconstruction because I had a double mastectomy. I had breast cancer, and my husband had bought me an iPad Pro so I could keep drawing at that time, um, just to keep myself occupied. Um, and
Hmm.
Barney, the flowers that are a part of the Barney collection, were the first things that came out um,
Wow.
from that. So yeah, it's been tucked away, and finally it's seen the light of day. And I'm very proud that it's coming out with Milton and King, another Australian company. It just seems like it was fated, meant to be. But
So this first design came from the result of you dealing with something very traumatic and serious and, well, life threatening.
yeah, it's something I haven't really spoken about. It's not something that I ever made public. So talking to you is kind of like the first time I'm speaking openly about it. But at the time, I went off all social media, didn't want to discuss it, just wanted to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I was really, again, it's like people close to you know, and my husband knew that I had to keep being creative and, you know, the iPad. It's a bit of a joke in our family because my mother was a bit addicted to her iPad, but
Oh,
it
really?
really did open up um, that area where I feel that art really was my therapy, my way back to dealing with what I was going through, and it was of great assistance. So I always think like art therapy, anything like that, is so valuable, and it's I can speak from experience in saying it definitely helped me process. I think you process emotions through drawing, whether it is, some people will work out and jog 20 miles and they'll
Mm-hmm.
process while they're jogging or cycling. I was processing while I was drawing. And yeah, and that was my memory. When I started drawing it, I just knew straight away it was for Barney, who was my grandfather, who passed away just after I was born. And he was a very well-known gardener in the city of Ipswich, um, and a very lovely man. From everything I've heard, he was a man's man. He was talented gardener, Mr. Green Thumb. Yeah, what can I say? He was the inspiration for that. So
Why do you think it was that, you're going through this and you have your iPad and you just start creating? Why do you think that um, your grandfather was the first thing to come to your mind or to inspire you? What do you think? Because you would
hmm,
think, as you're dealing with a cancer diagnosis, you're fighting this, and
yeah,
I'm wondering how does that become the first thing in your mind? How
I
is it? You know what I mean?
I know, and it's like you even asking me it now. I'm thinking, yeah, how is it? I just I don't know. He was such having never met him, but everyone talking about him was this mystery in my life.
Had he always been on your mind prior to this, and was he always just a figure that was
Um,
important in your family, and somehow this experience perhaps made you revisit his memory, or was it just something that sort of came out of nowhere?
it
And
pretty much came out of nowhere. But my grandmother, who I was very close to, she was, I think, 2 weeks shy of turning 105, and we were moving back to Denver, and every time I would say goodbye to her, I would always be thinking, "This is the last time. This is it. This is the last time I'm seeing
it's
her."
very heavy.
Yeah, and I had I had been going through this for like 20 years, thinking, at 100, almost 105, I'm thinking, and she. really didn't want to be around anymore. She was kind of, oh, my friends are passing away and I'm still here, but I still, it was very, and when she did pass away, it was like, yeah, people, there's a different relationship, I think, with your grandparents to your own parents. It's a
Hmm.
really special relationship.
Yeah.
But I think she kept his memory alive
Hmm.
in the things that she kept around the house. Like there was some fretwork above doorways, and she'd say, "We're never changing that because Barney did that, and that has to stay exactly as it was." So he was larger than life by never being there. But I always, my mum used to, say, if you ever want to speak to him, you just speak to him. He's always there. So I've always imagined him being around, even though he's not here. I imagine
Hmm.
his spirit being with us. Um,
Well, I can imagine him being very touched and proud of these three designs that you've made as a tribute to him. They're beautiful designs.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm. Yeah, it's my little thank you to him. I think the fact that the interesting part was he was a gardener. My mother was a gardener. I'm a gardener. It's like it's yeah.
So Scottsdale must be very frustrating for you.
You know what? The interesting thing about Scottsdale is come this time of the year, in Denver, they're still, clearing their driveways of snow. But in Scottsdale, we're planting petunias. So it's
Oh,
like
okay.
I do get some time of the year when I get to, you know,
Tend to a garden.
yeah. And yeah, and I think that's like speaking earlier about having the grass and going xeriscape. It's a big thing for me to actually take the grass out and do a xeriscape. My
Yeah, because it almost seems like a family tradition to have a
Oh
garden.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Even my brother, my younger brother, he sent me a picture of he'd mowed the lawn and he wanted me to see how beautiful his lawn looked. And I'm like, yep, we all have it. We all have this thing about gardening. And because I think you look at your house and it's like, yes, part of it's inside and the other half of your house is your outside. So, and being an Australian, that's always been a big part.
Um, Before I move on to some of these other designs in the collection, are you health wise? Are you okay now? Are you still dealing, or
I've actually, well, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. And I've had an epiphany actually when we're away that
in Italy?
in Italy that my husband and I managed to get ourselves a cold each. And we were buying things over the counter over there, which is very different to what you can buy over the counter here in the US. And I decided to come back and go off all of my medication. So I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm going off it. And I'd gone off some of it straight away after diagnosis. They put you on medication. Actually, they had to put me on medication early because of COVID. But so anyway, I'm going off the medication and just taking my chances with just eating healthy, eating organic diet and looking after ourselves. I just feel that I've lost both my parents. I've lost quite a few family members and friends, and a lot of the time it's been from, sometimes you just are taking too many things, and I just feel that sometimes, for myself in particular, I've decided not to go that route and to just live life.
So
I
you needed a sort of a clean out and to just make sure you're filling your body with good
Yeah,
things.
yeah, and it's reading labels,
Mm-hmm.
all of that, and it just being aware of what you're eating, and so that's the route we're taking, and and but I feel that with everyone, I think health is super important. And one thing I will say though, in retrospect, is that you can go for tests up and down. I mean, I went this route, but you have to trust your own instinct. If you feel something's wrong, follow that instinct.
Mm-hmm.
And I had doctors telling me, I'm fine, you're good, nothing's wrong. And I
Oh,
knew,
really?
Yeah, I knew. I'm like, I know nothing. I know something's wrong, and it was just a matter of. I even went for a biopsy, and they said you're good, nothing to worry about, and it
Wow.
was wrong. So it's like I think you have to trust your instinct, and
That's very powerful because you would think getting the medical opinions and even a biopsy that clears
mm,
you, you'd stop worrying, but somehow you still knew.
it was. Initially, it was like, "Yay, I'm good." This thing was it was a huge relief, but which is, and that's where you think, "Oh, I'm good," but you're not. So it comes, yeah, it always comes down to that inner feeling, and you have to trust it. And a lot of the time, we look to doctors and the medical industry as like having all the answers, and that's not always the case.
They're
So
just people.
yeah, and people make mistakes, and you just have to listen to that inner voice that tells you get a second opinion.
Now, I hope you don't mind me asking,
Mm.
how did you know? What were you feeling?
It was an ache. It was an ache I had,
Hmm.
and like honestly, and I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, thousands of women go through what I went through, thousands, and everyone is of a certain age. You know, you start going in for a mammogram.
Mm-hmm.
Had plenty of mammograms, had ultrasounds, had it all, and they could not pick it up. So it's like there was one doctor that did see something, and she goes, "There is something not right here." So then I had to go see another doctor who was in our insurance group, and they said, "No, there is nothing there. They're wrong." So I was relieved, but at the same time, and you're thinking, who do you trust? Who do you believe? So
Yeah.
it was like during all of this time that COVID happened, and
A terrible time to be sick with anything else other than COVID.
yeah, so it was a really it was a really hard year for us because we had lost my brother had lost his wife the same year to a
Oh,
battle with
no.
cancer. So it was a really crummy year. But again, she was fighting cancer for 5 years, and she knew at the end. She You just have this knowing,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's something you just have to follow through on. It's like
Yeah.
I said, it's an inner voice, and you've got to trust your own inner voice. And sometimes you might have to change doctors, but I know that the doctors that I did find in the end, I was super happy with. I was very happy with the doctors that stepped forward and helped me through.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, so just keep looking. And mine was a hunt, and it was funny actually because my husband and I would go meet these surgeons, and we would walk out and go, he's not the one. He's not
Huh.
it. And
Like you're
then
dating.
yes, you're interviewing for a job. Who's going to cut me open? Um, it's something that people, don't really talk about. People will talk about donating to, a fund for breast cancer research or whatnot. That's as much as what's being discussed. But there's a lot more to it behind the scenes, like the emotional roller coaster, and having a modality like I had my art to delve into, which I'm super grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's and honestly, when I part of my treatment was to go through radiation, and you forget it's like I'd be in the waiting room to go in for radiation, and there's all these guys there that are being treated for prostate cancer. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, and you'd get to know them and meet them, and it's it's interesting how many people are affected that
Yeah.
you don't
Well, I
really
think it's
realize.
great. I think it's great that you're speaking about it because I think it may help a lot of other people kind of come to terms with getting checked out or taking their health a bit more seriously, and also at the same time being able to find things, whether it's fitness, or in your case, be creativity and art, as a way to you know process everything that you're going through and to create something good and positive out of a scary situation. Um, so, I mean, in light of that, I'd like to get into everything else that you've created. Were all these, that we talked about the Barney's designs,
Hmm.
were all these other designs coming out around the same time? Because I noticed you have, there's a whole, like, a few designs here that are very tropical. You've got the cockatoo palms and the Havana banana, and you've got the um, a Laguna palm, I think it's called.
Hmm.
They're all very much, you can tell they're an ode to Queensland, Australia, with that
Hmm.
tropical vibe. Were these all sort of coming out at the same time, as well as around the time when you're doing the Barney ones?
Barney Barney was probably that and Havana Banana around similar time frame. Everything else is more recent. Um, and Yeah, it's like the first, like if looking at Barney in comparison to the rest of the collection, it is way more traditional than
Yes.
anything else I have. Um, and that would, you know, that's that's Barney pretty much. Um, Apparently, he was only ever seen in a suit and a hat.
Is that right?
Yes.
That's definitely something we don't. You look back on old photos and you see everybody dressed up in suits and hats and stuff,
Yeah,
and you sort of miss it.
that was him. He had a suit and a hat and a pipe. He smoked a pipe. So
Now everyone just sort of dresses in pajamas and hoodies.
I know it's which is interesting because going to Italy, it's completely opposite. I think Americans were very casual living here,
Hmm.
and over there, it's like you know, it's nice to get dressed up occasionally.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's the most traditional. The others are, they're little odes to everybody. Like I mentioned, we lost my sister-in-law Natalie to cancer, and seagrass was for her. She loved the ocean and she loved being outside, so that was an ode to Natalie. Um, and yeah, the um, the lattice was an
Hmm.
ode to my dad, who loved gardening as well. And yeah, and the cockatoo palms as well. That was the cockatoos have a special significance with him, and he loved his palms, as did my mother. Um, but I always when I do the fabrics, I always try and make a storyline with each print.
Hmm.
So like in this instance, I for myself I would put the moon waves with the
Hmm.
Havana banana. um, I would match the Mojave village with the Barney. I would pair them off, so it's like I like the look of, like, say you might do a bedroom in the Barney and then do the bathroom in the Mojave Village. I like being able to look from one room into the next room and seeing the story continue, but not the same wallpaper.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you've made them so that they could kind of fit together.
Yeah, yeah. and and when I do the fabrics, it's usually a three. It's three. It's usually it'll be a floral or a tropical print with an accent print with a stripe.
Hmm.
So we have lots of stripes to marry with everything. And when this is released, I think we're looking at the 22nd of February. Um, the fabrics that go with these prints will be available as well. So
Great. Yeah. So you can go to your website, Beverly Bungalow, and get a matching fabric to one of the wallpapers.
yeah, not everything will be up there, but a good selection from this Haven collection you'll find. But
It's so great that you have, like you said, a tribute to your would be your sister-in-law. you've got so many stories that you tell with these different designs, or at least where they come from.
Mm,
Um, Tell me a little bit about the Mojave Village one. It's very, very much seems like Native American sort of pattern to it. Mojave Village.
completely different to the others as well. So this is like anyone looking at it will think, oh my gosh, this is such a hodgepodge, but it's just a snippet of a larger collection that we have. Mojave Village was a tribute to my husband's grandmother, who was a Native American,
Okay.
um, and which we knew that she was Native American. Um, but recently we did the ancestry.com testing
Okay.
on my daughter's request. So we all sent in our samples, and it came back with our percentages, and it just confirmed everything. So I think now we're we're going, not myself obviously, but my husband and my children are going back to do there's a Native American DNA test you can do to give you even more information.
Wow. So your husband from Japan had Native American ancestry.
Yes, his mum was Japanese, and his dad was his mother was American Indian, and his father immigrated out from Madrid, Spain. So
Wow.
they were in New Mexico. So when you look at the ancestry, there's a big group of Spanish settlers that came out to New Mexico, and that's where he met his Native American wife.
Wow.
So
And so
yeah,
that's what went into the Mojave Village design.
yes, and there is more to that series as well, which we'll slowly bring out as time goes on. But yeah, and I think it's just showing respect to the heritage. It's like Barney obviously is from my grandfather, but our family is, you know, we're made up of
They're complex.
a very, yeah, we're very a little bit of everything, which I think is great, and it it's nice. I feel that really broadens your view on our planet, pretty much, and
Yeah.
and it's like
Well,
accepting of other people.
this collection has a little bit of everything too, and I think that's definitely reflects your thoughts there. You have, you go from florals, you have these sort of geometrical patterns, but I really love how the the colorways you've chosen are very they'll really work with people who sort of love neutrals and subtlety. Um, even so, the ones that have sort of the blue or the purple or lavender hues to them, so there's color. So they're not all just gray and white or something. So there's color, but the colors are very easy on the eyes. I guess what I'm trying to say. Um,
Yeah, well,
did
thank
you
you.
did you was that sort of is that sort of in keeping with your sort of aesthetic that you have across your fabrics as well?
Very much so. Very much so. I tend to be more on the subtle level. Everything is. Sometimes I need to make sure that I put enough depth into the colors that they can actually be seen. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they're so pale they're just there. But I've had friends look at them, and one friend in particular, she just likes black and white,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, "Well, whereas I need something that has more oomph." So I'm always I'm always thinking of her when I'm thinking, okay, I usually start with something that's really bright, and then
Mm-hmm.
as I work with something, I'll tone it down, tone it down, tone it down. And
Mm.
the colorways that you're talking about, they're pretty standard across the board, like the
Yeah.
Stella, which is like a gray blue, the Rhea, which is like a vintage gold, very subtle vintage gold, and the greens, which is fern, yeah, and the dew and the blush. It's subtle because I feel that once not everyone wants bright and bold,
Mm-hmm.
and not everyone wants a plain white wall.
Right.
So. It's
Yeah,
I've
it really works because there's enough color in these, but they're just it's not so stark. It's not so um, overly saturated. It's desaturated a bit to where you have the colors
yeah,
without going too crazy.
yeah. I'm looking at Mrs. Jones, the chevron, and the southern sky, and they
I
were
love the Southern Sky. That's one of my favorites, which is again a design that's very different from anything else in
yeah.
this Haven collection.
That that was one of my more recent ones, the southern sky, because when I went back, um, I think it was in between my mother and my father passing away. Um, my brother and sister-in-law have a house in the Bunya Mountains, and I would often stay there. And it's one places in the world where you get the most beautiful um, view of the Milky Way and of the Southern Cross.
Hmm.
And that was that came about from my stays there. And just, I mean, you've been the southern night sky is different to the northern nights, in the northern hemisphere, what we see
Yeah.
here. Both beautiful, but the I think we get a better view of the Milky Way in the southern hemisphere.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's that one. But again, it's like it's very monochromatic, that print, compared to like the Barney, which is more colorful. So there's a big, yeah, there's a little, I've tried to make it so there's a little bit of something for everyone.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that this was from your stay when you were. What you said you're staying with your brother, or
Um,
what you said in the mountains there. Who were you staying with?
I a lot of the time I was there, I was by myself. But
Mm-hmm.
it's my sister-in-law and my brother's house at the Bunya
Okay.
Mountains. Mm.
So the question that I was going to ask was, you have all these designs, and there's so much story and narrative built in to the designs. Have you shared them with your? I mean, I'm sure your husband knows, and your kids probably know. They've probably seen you create them, and as you're doing it. But sort of,
Mm.
does your extended family and your siblings, are they aware of these designs? Have they seen them yet? Have they had any sort of feedback? Because I would imagine, that
Um,
you'd be sort of flattered to be included in
they
these designs.
really don't know.
Well, they're
It'll
about to.
it's going to be a surprise for them. Um, my my older brother has an idea, but I haven't shared with him the story behind any of it. And
Oh, okay.
that's kind of like, even, yeah, it's something that is, yeah, being seen for the first time, this collection. And yeah, it's been a long time coming. And yeah, I'm not that person that can talk about it. It's like I talk through the artwork. It'll be
Mm-hmm.
like this. Talking to you is the most I've discussed it.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it is very personal. But then I look at, I might, people will look at, and everyone will see something different, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's meant to be shared, and everyone will see something different.
Yeah.
Um, and that's okay. It's, yeah, it's
Well, as an artist, I'm sure you love it when people can kind of put their own impressions on something or their own sort of story into something and have it mean whatever it's going to mean to them. But it is really interesting to hear from the artist herself, uh, the the seed of where these designs came from, and whether it was the person that inspired it, or the event that you were going through that spawned an appreciation for something, or conjured a memory that ended up in this in these beautiful prints. I think it's exciting for everyone to hear where it all comes from. Ultimately, when people put these on their walls in their homes, they're going to take on their own stories and their own new meanings. But I think
totally, yeah.
it's a really really great collection. I'm actually very very excited for it to be released. I think people are going to love it, and I can't wait for everyone to see it.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure talking with you today and discussing everything. Even though, yeah, it's not something that I've really spoken about. But yeah, it's I'm proud of it as well. Looking at it, and then I can't wait for it to be released and see what people think.
Well, I can tell you're a very private person, and you don't really talk about this stuff very, very often. So I'm very grateful that you spent over an hour with me talking about everything. And yeah, I hope we can connect on the other side of this collection being released. Because you said you're working on something new, right? Even though this
Yeah,
hasn't been released yet, or it's just about to be released,
yeah.
you're already working on new designs.
Yes, I've just finished the next collection. Yeah,
How many
it's
how many designs are in that collection
I
so
think
far?
about 10.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah.
So the creativity is still flowing.
It does not stop. It's like a tap you cannot turn off.
Well,
Yeah.
that's such a good thing. I
Yeah.
mean, we all get to benefit from that tap flowing.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your time today, Chris. I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Thanks, Allison. You have a good day.
You too, Chris. Thanks so much.